Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the 1904 Club podcast, the Hull City podcast, of course, from the Hull Daily Mail. And because it's half term this week, we've got rid of all the kids. So there's no Fletch, no Burnsy, and Prutz as well. So it's just me and Kathryn this morning. Kathryn, how are you?
I'm not bad, thanks, Baz. My face is slightly almost as red as your England shirt, just because it's a hectic time. I've got to get a train to Swansea later, so I went for a run this morning and jumped straight on the podcast.
Yeah, well, sorry about that. I'm clearly dressed to go to Wales later on.
Oh, you look like an English tourist.
I am one of those. Plenty to cover. This isn't going to be a full-length episode, I'm afraid, folks, because it is a bit of a chaotic day for everybody. So we're going to cover a couple of topics, and then we'll be back fully after the game against Preston on Easter Monday. But of course, it's a huge weekend coming up. City at Swansea on Good Friday, and then at home to Preston North End on Monday afternoon. And then suddenly there'll only be 2 games left. So with only 4 left, kind of because of how Easter's fallen this year, it's fallen right at the back end of the year, and we are, kind of at the crux of it. We'll start with a quick recap on Coventry, Kathryn, and you were, like myself, you were at the MKM Stadium on Monday night. A point, I think most people may have taken a point given Coventry's form before the game. When Casey Palmer has that chance, before half time to make it 1-0, you think, that's a game to be won. And then obviously Coventry get that. Charlie Hughes' own goal was a bit harsh because I think Matt Grimes' shot was probably just about on target. But anyway, they go 1-0 down and you're thinking it's Luton all over again. They fight back and they get a point. What kind of, you were in the stadium as a fan on the night. What was your kind of feeling as the game ebbed and flowed? Because I thought it was a really good game to watch, unlike so many this season at the MKM.
Yeah, I think first half, I mean, I would say Coventry probably edged it, and especially probably in terms of chances, but obviously Hull City had the best chance, and it did feel like they were very much in the game, a little bit like Luton, although Coventry are obviously a better kind of football side than they are. You did kind of sort of have your head in your hands when Casey Palmer missed both of the chances, and then it looked like at one point obviously Coventry were going to put the ball in the net for us after they'd blocked his shot. And it just kind of then conceding straight after half time, it did just feel like it was going to be, like the Luton game again. I don't know what is said at half time. I don't know why it's such a problem. Like it's either, that's 2 home games in a row now where it's in the first minute after half time that they've conceded a really, really soft goal. And in quite a lot of other games, they're conceding, in the first 5 or 10 minutes after half time. So I don't know why that's such a problem. But obviously, unlike Luton, they did manage to find a way back, albeit a bit of a strange goal. But at this point in the season, it doesn't really matter. The 2 substitutes coming on and combining for it. And I'll be honest, I didn't see us coming back into it. I was struggling to see where the goal was coming from. It cut sort of 70 minutes. I just sort of was resigned to another defeat. We got a little bit of luck in the fact Coventry missed a few good chances. Either Pando made some really good saves again. And then Kamara just did what quite a lot of other players were seemingly not doing and had a shot at goal. And, Coventry's keeper was probably their weakest point. Sort of felt after the game we should have probably had a few more shots at him. But I think definitely it felt like a point gained at full time because there was a point in the match where I just wasn't convinced they were going to get anything from it. How much that helps them psychologically coming from behind, I don't know, because we've said about Hull City so many times when they win a game, like this is going to really kind of G them up for the next one, and then they immediately kind of go and lose. So hopefully it does this time, but I guess we'll see on Friday.
I thought Coventry, I don't know what you think, but I thought Coventry were kind of, particularly in the first half, some of their movement, their passing, their one-touch passing through midfield was really, really nice to watch. And it was kind of everything that, City haven't been this season, but want to be. And at times we saw a lot of it last season, that the ability to go from back to front with 3 or 4 passes and really cut teams open. Again, the Southampton away performance really springs to mind. But credit to Ivor because he was brilliant. And I'd imagine he's a shoo-in for Player of the Year, which is incredible given where you think of his situation, both when he arrived and in the back end of last season, the disagreements with Liam and the owner about who should go in goal. And obviously he lost his place to Carl Rushworth early this year, and then Carl went, as we've talked about before. But huge strength of character from Ivor, and he just looks. What do you know? The thing I like about him the most, he tries to catch the ball. He's not one of these goalkeepers that is just so intent on pushing the ball back out, like we saw it with Emi Martinez in the PSG game the other night. Fairly tame shot, pushes it, or the cross I think it was, straight back out into danger, and it gets slammed in. Ivor generally tries to catch it and hold it. It makes such a difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's a bit more commanding of his area now. I think he was a little bit erratic at the start of the season, but I think he's really sort of settled down. And I trust him so much more now than I sort of did going into the first game of the season. I question marks over him whether he was the right choice to be number one, just because all we'd seen of him was that pre-season where he looks a little bit mad, and we'd not really seen him much in competitive games other than that. But he really seems a lot calmer. He's got that relationship with the back four. His distribution could be a little bit better, but I think with that, like, you can always. I feel like it's much easier to improve that and work on that and the training pitch than it is to improve like the other side of things, like the commanding your area and that mental kind of resilience that he seems to have built. So yeah, I think he'd probably be my player of the season as well.
I don't think he's going to have, in fairness, and no disrespect to anybody else, but I don't think there's going to be too much competition, is there, for player of the season. We'll find out in a couple of weeks, I think, just before the final game of the season. But just quickly on that, can you think of too many other candidates? There's going to have to be some just to make it a competition. But
I guess.
maybe.
I think if Charlie Hughes hadn't had his injuries, and like if you look at the games he's played, I would say he would have been a candidate. But he's just not played as much. Obviously, he started the season late, had his appendicitis, and then he got a bit of a run, and then he had his injury. I think when he has played, he's made the odd mistake here and there, but I'd say he'd probably be up there despite kind of not having the same amount of games. And then, I'm really sort of struggling for another. I mean, Stephen Alzate's been fairly consistent. I think he's had, as we say again with a lot of players in the team, ebbs and flows of some really good performances and then a few kind of drop-offs. But he's been fairly consistent and has played the majority of the games.
I think you'd have to. Yeah. I think you'd have to probably throw Sean McLaughlin in there because he's been and he's not set the world alight, but Mac has been consistent and he's been asked to play, left back since since Giles fell out of favour. It's been McLaughlin, hasn't it? So.
He actually got forward quite well against Coventry, actually, as well. I thought, he was one of the sort of more attacking players on the pitch, kind of in the first half.
It's hard, and I was saying this at the training ground last week, and I think I kind of think Macca may have overheard what I was saying, and it wasn't. I wasn't being critical of him when I say this, but he is a left-footed central defender playing at left back, and he's expected to get forward, and he tries to go forward, but then his natural instinct in many ways is to cut back inside when he gets to sort of the halfway line area and go inside or go back. And that's in no way a criticism of him because he's a left-footed centre-half playing at left back. And as I've said this before, you've got City spent £4 million on what should have been a marauding left back with the ability to go from his own penalty area, bomb down the left-hand side to the other penalty area and get a cross in and create something. That's Ryan Giles, who's currently sat on the bench up on Teesside. So, and obviously there was a couple of targets in January that Ruben wanted. Callum O'Dowda was one of them. He was the first target, then Charlie Taylor at Southampton. Neither of those they could get. He had other options. He didn't feel were suitable. He felt that he was better placed sticking with what he's got. He obviously doesn't fancy Matty Jacob. He doesn't feel that Matty Jacob is either at the level or in terms of quality or consistent enough to come in and be, because on paper you think, well, Matty Jacob would be a better option because he's a natural left-sided left back, but obviously for whatever reason he's not reaching that level, is he, to come in and play above Masha?
Matty Jacob, I think, couldn't he? I think he could have done with. I think in an ideal world, if they had got another left back in, they probably would have sent him maybe on loan in January because I just think he needs to. He's probably should have gone on loan in the summer and had a season maybe in League One of just kind of getting consistent games, and it would have probably done him the world of good. Whereas he's been really sort of like getting half the odd chance here and there. And there have been times where he's actually I thought he was pretty good against Leeds. He looked a little bit vulnerable at times, but also I thought he did well at times. And obviously scored at Sheffield United away. There's been times where he's kind of he's done all right, but I just think he's not quite ready yet to be the starting left back in the Championship, and he probably could have done with a loan in the summer. And it sort of maybe feels like a little bit of not a wasted year, but maybe a sort of, in hindsight, it's he's been sat here. He probably should have been playing somewhere else.
The thing with Matty Jacob is he's 23 years of age, and he's only played 23 times for Hull City, and that's mad when you think of it. And you think of players going out on loan, perhaps a little bit younger, but you're right. He needs to go. He's been at Gateshead, and now he's at Hull City. He's back at Hull City, but he's not. And you kind of feel when you're 23, you need to be playing, regularly. Not 8. I think he's played 8 times this season, so he's got. That's a conundrum for him in the summer, isn't it? Is he going to stick around and be part of Ruben's plans? Clearly, he's not going to be first choice. They're going to go and sign the left back. They are going to go and sign the left back in the summer. And they've also got the Ryan Giles situation to deal with. So if you're Matty Jacob, you want to stay at Hull City, but actually, if he can't afford to spend another season, on the bench, playing 8 times, can he?
Exactly, and that's the thing. I think we all know the left back is a situation that they want to, sort in the summer and bring in. I mean, obviously, it might depend what division they're in. We're probably discussing this as in they're in the Championship. If we actually dropped into League One, I think Matty Jacob would have more of a chance of playing potentially. But I guess part of it might depend, what division they're in. Hopefully, it is the Championship, and maybe he's thinking. I don't know how long he's got left on his contract. I mean,
27.
Oh, so he's got time.
And a year option.
If I was him and I got the opportunity to go, I would just go and take the loan. I know we kind of say 23, he should be starting by now, but I think take a loan for a year, whether it's League One or lower down in the Championship. I think League One would probably be best for him, like a club in League One that's going for promotion. See how he does, and hopefully it goes well, and then he could come back in and challenge again because he's got time. It's not like he's playing for a contract. Whereas obviously Brandon Fleming, who's been around for ages and has had more loans than Matty Jacob at different levels and hasn't quite kind of ever made it. He's probably obviously going to, leave in the summer. So if I was him, and I had the opportunity to go on loan, I'd probably be doing that.
Absolutely. Let's look ahead to the weekend then. They go into it, City, 3 points clear of the bottom 3, plus their goal difference above the bottom 3 is miles better. It would take over the next 4 games, would take an incredible set of results all around for that to change. I think Derby and Stoke have got close, but I think Stoke are starting to pull away now. Obviously, that big win at Cardiff was huge for them. I think City's goal difference is -9, Derby's is -11. Everybody else is out of the equation. Derby have scored 3 more goals than City, that could come into it. That we saw a couple of weeks ago when they beat Preston, they went above City. They were level on goal difference, but because they scored more goals, they went ahead. So that could come into it. Before we get into who's playing who, in terms of Hull City then, at Swansea have had a really strange season, haven't they? Started it under Luke Williams. When they came to the MKM Stadium in December, just before Christmas, they were threatening the top 6. Obviously lost. Mason Burstow was that brilliant winner to give Ruben his first win. They've sort of fallen away a bit. Luke Williams was sacked. They were starting to drop, and I think we said a month ago that Swansea were one of those teams that you thought might get sucked into it. Well, 3 wins. They've beaten Derby, they've beaten Plymouth, they won at Sunderland last weekend. 54 points now, home and hosed under Alan Sheehan. Now they've got Luka Modric, who came off the bench in the Bernabeu last night. City haven't got a great record there recently. I think the last win was 2016 in the Premier League. So 5 games, 5 visits without a win in Swansea. What difference will that make to Swansea? The fact that they've won 3 in a row, they're now safe, and City know that 6 points over Easter and they're safe. That's a huge carrot for them, isn't it?
I mean, I'm hoping Swansea might see it as mutually beneficial if they just, roll over and sort of Cardiff below us. Like let's just all shake hands on 3 points for City. I don't know. It's that fear, isn't it, with Swansea? Because they've been on such a good run, now they're just going to continue that. Are they in the groove now? Are they just going to keep kind of going on this kind of good run of form until the end of the season, or are they going to go, oh, right, okay, like we're home and dry now, take it easy a little bit, summer's not far away, sort of thing. You'd never really know with teams, and I still think it'll be a really difficult game. I still think because of the run that they're on, they'll just be in that mindset of like when you're on a winning run, you're just confident, aren't you? And all the pressure's on us. It's not on them. It's never a good place to be. You never really want to be playing with pressure unless you have, history of responding to it. And our history of responding to pressure is a bit mixed. They went and lost at Cardiff, beat Plymouth and Oxford at home, lost to Luton. So it kind of, when the pressure's on us, we sometimes respond and we sometimes don't. But yeah, maybe Swansea might just think, Cardiff, we wouldn't mind seeing them go down. Wrexham might come up, so they still have a Welsh derby, and we'll all be happy.
Absolutely. And they've got two players that I think would walk straight into Hull City's team, Lewis O'Brien and Liam Cullen. Lewis O'Brien in midfield and Liam Cullen. Funny enough, both players have been on their radar before. Lewis O'Brien a couple of times at Forest, but I think wages were a problem, which is mad. Kind of blows my mind a little bit, given some of the salaries that Hull City have paid out to players that have had a far less impact on the team than Lewis O'Brien would do or would have, and Liam Cullen as well is a player they've admired for quite a long time in attack. So, I mean, it's an opportunity though, isn't it? And we've said it at the risk of repeating ourselves a million times on the 1904 Club. We've said so many times that this is an opportunity for Hull City. Can they grasp it? I mean, that is the carrot. I said this to Ruben on whenever it was, Wednesday, and also João Pedro. We got to speak to João Pedro for the first time since he came to the club. So thanks to the club for putting him up through an interpreter. That was really good. But that is the carrot, isn't it? You go and get 6 points from 2 games away at Swansea, a very winnable game when you factor in the opposition, and then at home to Preston North End, who, on 49 points might still be looking over their shoulder a little bit. I guess if you ask Hecky, he'd go, yeah, we need another point or another win. Realistically, they're okay, I would think. But that is 2 games, not perfect games, because no game in the Championship is perfect, of course. But they're good fixtures for City, aren't they? They're big opportunities, and that is, for me, that's a huge carrot. I know they've not done it since way back when, and they've never, in fairness, whenever they've won a game, they've not looked like backing it up. They've always flattered to deceive. They're flaky. We know that. You can't really trust this team to go on a run because they've not done it in terms of winning games back to back. They've not done it under Ruben. So, but there is that element of kind of hope, isn't there, that actually 2 wins this weekend and you're done and dusted.
Yeah, absolutely. And same with Preston. I mean, you almost kind of hope they get the points that they need to be safe this on Friday. And then by the time they come to us on Monday, they're on the beach. That would be great if that was possible. But obviously football's not quite as simple as that. I do think, if only it was, I think what's good about the next set of games, I think obviously Derby play Luton on Friday. So
that's the early kickoff as well, at 12:30.
Drop points, if not both. I mean, part of me thinks a draw would be good, but also, like, you don't really want Derby winning, but you don't really want Luton winning. I think a draw would be lovely if that happened, but either way, like one of them might, Derby, if they win, could go above us, but at least if Luton lose, that keeps them down. I think Luton and Plymouth, if they don't win their games on Friday, then that might be finally say kind of goodbye to Plymouth, who just keep coming back. And yeah, I mean, with Preston, they're just a tricky team. I think it's I would have said it's better having them at home, but obviously our home form, we all know kind of what the home form's like. But I think it'd been worse go. Preston away is a really tricky place to go because they're very, very good at home. Away from home, I'm not convinced they'll be as difficult, but they might just still come and come for a point sort of thing. It very much depends on their mindset. I can't imagine a manager like Heckingbottom will just let them kind of, roll over. He sort of strikes me as somebody that's going to have his team sort of, expect high standards from them, whether they're playing for anything or not. So, but if you look at the 4 games left for, like, they're all like good games. Like, you're not playing anyone going for promotion. You're not playing anyone going for the playoffs. So you've got an opportunity there. All 4, technically, you could say are winnable. I don't think they'll win all 4, but all 4 of them, they've got, you would say you could go and get 3 points from them.
João Pedro does. João Pedro thinks they're going to win all 4.
He's an absolute madman.
I love his attitude. He he does kind of conform to that kind of Uncle João stereotype, because he swans around the training ground in kind of like old man trousers, and I think they're like Ugg slippers. Like, they're not slippers, but they're not sandals. They're like where the top of your foot is covered, but the back of it is open, but it's kind of like ridged at the back.
No,
like sheepskin. So they're like, I guess it's the sort of thing you would expect some like Italian fashionista to wear. But yeah, he was very positive about their chances. What I think the key thing for us, and why we're probably driving the narrative of make it safe this weekend, and Ruben was of the same opinion. I think he was like, let's do our job he said to me, let's go and do our job in Swansea and then finish the job on Monday. What you don't want to do, and all City fans listening to this around the world will be, we don't want to. What we don't want the situation is, and we've said this for months and months and months, is going to Portsmouth on the final day, needing to win to stay in the division, even needing a point to stay up, because that would be horrible for everybody. But I think they've got. Would you? I guess the answer is yes. I'm probably answering my own question here, but 4 points over the weekend. If you were to, however they come, it doesn't really matter. You can't. It's Hull City, so you can't predict anything. But 4 points over the Easter weekend, I think you'd have to say that would be a decent return.
Yeah, I think so. Just the way the season's gone, isn't it? You can't like sit here and say they must go and get 2 wins, because they're not capable. We've seen that they've not been capable of doing that. It'd be great if they did do that. But 4 points, I think. I mean, ideally, I don't really want to be going into that Derby game. I can't envisage a situation where we're safe by the Derby game, but equally, like, I don't want to be going into that Derby game with it being like 1 point between us, because the pressure on that game, our home form's not good. Derby obviously still in and around it. Like, it would be great if they just got 2 wins, but again, football is rarely like happens the way you want it to be, where you don't have stress. So I think, you would take 4 points and then just hope, obviously hoping Chris Wilder gets his act together and does us a favour by beating Cardiff. I mean, they have to win that, really, Sheffield United, to have any hope of automatic. I've got a friend that is around Sheffield United, and I've kind of said to them, they actually blamed me when I messaged them when they were beating Plymouth, because I said up the blades and then they went and lost and said that was your fault. So I'm not gonna do that if they take the lead against Cardiff. But yeah, I have messaged them to say, please tell Chris that he's not only got to win for them, but he's got to do us a favour.
I mean, it's bizarre. As much as you talk about Hull City potentially winning 1, 2, getting 4 points. I think if we throw it forward to Tuesday morning, we wouldn't be at all surprised if we're sitting there going, City have lost both games either, because that's how inconsistent they are. And we've seen them away at we've seen them away at Cardiff, we've seen them at home to Luton, we've seen them at home to Stoke, we saw them away at Watford, all 1-0 defeats. So I mean, sorry, the Stoke game was 2-1, but this team has flattered to deceive all season. And as much as you want to try and big them up and go, yeah, I think they can do this, I think they can do that, the reality is that they've been bottom of the table, second bottom, third bottom, just outside, pretty much from the get-go. So there's a reason why they're down there, and we know it's because they don't score enough goals, 41 in 42 games. But so let's hope they surprise us. Just quickly before we move on, Plymouth, as you touched on there, obviously bottom of the table. They are away at Middlesbrough on Good Friday, and then they are at home to Coventry on Monday. Luton away at Derby on Good Friday in the 12:30 kickoff on television, and then at home to Bristol City on Easter Monday. Cardiff, as you touched on rightly there, KB, away at Bramall Lane on in the late, or I think it's the 5:30 kickoff on Good Friday. Omar Reza, interestingly, they did win at Bramall Lane in the FA Cup in January. Actually, Omar Reza, the Cardiff manager, was doing his pre-match press, I think, on Wednesday, saying, basically admitting the club's fractured, it's all over the place, and he wouldn't be surprised if he was bulleted out in the final couple of games and somebody else was brought in to try and keep them up. So that's the next one. So again,
it's never a good sign, is it, when the manager says, I don't know if I'm going to be here to the end of the season and there's only 4 games left.
So yeah, away at Sheffield United at 5:30 on Good Friday, and then a big one at home to Oxford on Monday. Oxford, although I think they're probably out of it now, they're the late kickoff on Good Friday at home at 8:00 at home to Leeds United, and then crucially, obviously, away at Cardiff on Monday. Stoke have got Sheffield Wednesday at home, biggest crowd apparently at the Bet365 since they got relegated from the Premier League, and then away at Leeds on Monday. Portsmouth away at Norwich on Good Friday, at home to Watford on Monday, and then Swansea and QPR on my list of out of it now.
That Oxford one might work in our favour if, like, assuming they get beat by Leeds. Not that I really ever want to cheer for Leeds, but assuming they get beat by Leeds, they then might see that Cardiff game as like they might need something again. Because if they suddenly beat Leeds, they might then go to Cardiff and relax, which we don't really want. Because I think Cardiff, as seen as the team, they're below us, and obviously we talk about it being fractured. They're the ones that I feel like, if it's going to come down to, let's say, if Plymouth and Luton have gone, or if they go that with that one last place, I'm looking at ourselves, Derby and Cardiff, one of the 3, and Oxford could still be in and around it if they lose at Leeds. So then they could go and beat Cardiff. That might work out actually all right.
Yeah, and I'll tell you who's going to have a massive say in this is West Bromwich Albion, because they play Cardiff, they play Luton, Cardiff, and Derby.
Come
on, Baggies, and they're obviously and the Baggies are chasing a place in the playoffs, and their form has been a bit up and down. Obviously, we were there before the international break and drew. They before their last win, they'd drawn 2 and lost 3 in a row, and they're 3 points outside the top 6, albeit with one of the better goal differences. So West Brom, are always a threat at this stage of the season, as we know from last year. So, West Brom, West Brom host Luton on the final day. They go to Derby on Monday, and they host West Brom next Saturday. They host Cardiff West Brom next Saturday. So, yeah, they're going to have a huge say. And so we're all... funny enough, my mum was a junior throstle back in the day, so an Albion fan. So fingers crossed, Albion do us all a favour. Before we go on what is an absolutely huge weekend across the Championship, and it's one of those. It crops up so many seasons that I think all 24 teams in the Championship have got something to play for, whether it's promotion or relegation. Mathematically, that is. In reality, it might not be possible. But mathematically, every one of the 24 Championship teams has got something to play for, be it promotion or relegation, playoffs included. Kathryn, that sums up just how mental this division is, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say that's why we love it. Obviously, right now, that's not why we love it, but generally, that's why we love it.
Yeah, it's great. We're going to finish very quickly because this is a really complex story that's kind of been... It's emerged over the last 72 hours or so, but has been developing from what we understand for quite some time, is Hull City Ladies. Now, of course, no affiliation to Hull City Association Football Club, the club in the EFL. But Kathryn, some really interesting developments that have emerged, over the last few hours involving Hull City Ladies. I know we've got to be careful because there's a huge legal implication here, so we've got to tread carefully. And there's certain things we can't say for legal reasons, so apologies for that. But what's your understanding of the situation involving that football club?
Yeah, well, obviously we saw like a number of players kind of come out over the weekend, I think Sunday night, Monday, making accusations towards the chairman, the owner. I'm not quite sure of his official title now. I think it's changed a few times. Danny Johnson, allegations that he'd misused club funds. There's been allegations that he's, following those accusations from players, that he's applied for the club to be you applied for voluntary relegation, which I don't think would be approved by the FA. But obviously the club seems to be in a very difficult situation at the minute. One of my sort of colleagues in women's football, Tom Garry at the Guardian, has written a good story on this and has clearly spoken to a lot of people. And there's a certain kind of questions that have been raised over money that's gone missing. I mean, in Tom's story, obviously, it mentions kind of about £200,000 that's unaccounted for. And, it talks about, players being very concerned that the club might not exist anymore. And as you mentioned, it's a very complicated situation regarding to the men's team because they've got no affiliation. There's been an agreement in place for a long time, which I think dates back to when Adam Pearson was chairman, that they could use the name Hull City. That's why they're allowed to use that name. Although how much longer they'll be allowed to use that name, I do question. And because obviously Hull City Ladies, I think it's officially HCLFC, is a limited company. Johnson is one of two directors. The other director is the former manager, Rachel Gay. It's very difficult for Hull City to then come and say, okay, we'll come in and save them, or we'll come and take them in and then bring them under, because effectively they're a limited company that they don't own. So they'd have to come to an agreement with the people that currently own it, as I understand from the FA, which I assume, the current directors would want some monetary value, they would be wanting some financial, stuff from Hull City to agree to that, or Hull City would have to make their own team and enter at Tier 7, which, yes, they could do, but that's always difficult as well because, PR-wise, if clubs have done it in the past, if you start your own team and one already exists, that doesn't always look particularly great either. And obviously they'd be entering at a much lower level than what the current Hull City team is playing at. So it's definitely one that to keep an eye on. I think investigations are obviously ongoing, and whether he will be removed from the club, what kind of happens, obviously we'll probably have to wait and see. But hopefully for the players that are involved, it's resolved, and they've had a pretty good season. I think they're about 14 points clear of relegation. So the idea that they could be relegated, despite that would be a real shame, and hopefully it kind of gets sorted for them soon.
Absolutely, yeah. Words that have been said to me, things like sabotage and things like that. Especially as you say, they've been having a good season. They're nowhere near any threat of relegation. It would be heartbreaking for the players, wouldn't it, if that happened? So yeah, it's a story to keep track on. I know people are looking into it to try and find out more and find out, but it is complex, and these things are never straightforward. So look. Back onto Hull City then. You are off to Swansea, right? Am I right in thinking?
Indeed, I'm getting a train in a couple of hours actually. So,
I better let you go then to go and get sorted out.
Indeed, yeah.
If you are, it looks like it's going to be a big crowd down there tomorrow. They've obviously reduced tickets. Fair play to Swansea. I think £14.50 for adults and a lot less for everybody else. So it could be a packed crowd, and sometimes that has the adverse effect on Hull City when it's at the MKM Stadium. So maybe. It has the adverse effect on Swansea City, who haven't been, for a while at least, familiar of playing in front of full houses, perhaps apart from the big South Wales derby. Look, that's all we've got time for today. Apologies that it is a bit of a shortened version, but as I say, so much going on with it being Easter and the build-up and whatnot. But we will be back next week to look back at, obviously, the Easter weekend, that we hope has been a successful one for Hull City, and look ahead to that massive MKM Stadium clash against Derby County next weekend. Who knows what state both clubs will be in when that game comes around. Kathryn, as always, absolute pleasure to have you on and talking about City.
Thank you, Baz. Thank you. Maybe, I probably won't see you in Swansea, but I'll wave at you from a distance wherever the press box.
I'll be the one waving in my yellow coat. If you are travelling to Swansea, obviously a heck of a long way down to South Wales and back. So hopefully the team rewards you with a positive result. And then if you are at the MKM Stadium on Monday, have a great. Let's hope it's a great afternoon. And if all that's left for me to say is Happy Easter. Enjoy the chocolate.